Alright, we should be recording now. So today we're gonna go over yeah, Slack takes up a lot of memory from what I remember. So today we're gonna go over more components for you guys to possibly use in your final projects. So today we're gonna go over split view controllers and page view controllers. So what is a split view controller? A split view controller is basically a controller that's a container managing two separate child view controllers. So the two separate child view controllers are your master view controller and your detail view controller. So the master view controller is basically your primary view controller that controls what shows up in the detail. And typically it's just a regular table view with a bunch of options, and when you click out on an option, it will update the detail view controller on the right side. Sometimes they're also called primary and secondary view controllers. So as an example, something like this, you've probably seen this on like your phone apps or iPad apps. This would be a typical split view controller. So you have a custom table view on the left side displaying all of your different options that you can click on. And when you actually click on an option, it would update your detail view controller. So yes, it's basically a if you don't have enough room, so say you put it into portrait mode, that's when it sort of just shows either the master or the uh, secondary view. And that's another example. You probably used Facebook before. Facebook Messenger, you have your master and detail left and right. So typically, the split view controller is going to be your root view controller of your application. So if you guys remember, have you gone over navigation controllers, just different container views? So a split view controller can't be contained within another nav controller. So it always has to be the parent. So you can't have like a view controller that goes to a nav controller and then that goes to a split view controller. That won't work. So it always has to be the parent. Um, the way it renders to the split view depends on how much space is available on the device. So on an iPad, there's a lot of space, so typically even between landscape and portrait mode, you'll always have both views open at the same time. But say you're on like an iPhone. Depending on what iPhone you have, I think your iPhone's probably, or is that an
It's
iPhone?
Android.
Oh, well, okay. Well, if you had a screen as big as that, it typically, when it's in horizontal mode, it will be able to show the master and secondary view together. But when you move it into portrait, that's when it doesn't have enough space to show both screens at once. So typically what it does is both controllers will be on the screen. It'll just be on top of the other. Either the secondary will be on the primary or primary will be on the secondary. And when you swipe to the left, that's when you can bring possibly the primary back into focus. Okay, cool. So preferred display mode is basically a setting that you can set on the split view controller that will try to accommodate a certain display style, and we'll go over the display styles now. So there's three different display modes for a split view controller. You have a side-by-side, which is your typical primary and secondary view displaying on the screen at the same time when you have enough space. And if you remember from the example, it looks like the master view controller always seems like it takes up a little bit less space than the detail, and you can actually adjust that based on this parameter here. So this preferred primary column width fraction basically adjusts the size of each of the views. So you could potentially make the primary primary view controller bigger than the detail if that was some case that you had to handle in your application. So the other display mode for a split view controller is hidden display mode. So essentially what this is the secondary view is shown on the screen and the primary view is off the screen. So kind of like what I was talking about before, you have both views on the screen, but one is just on top of the other. So when the secondary view is shown, the primary view is basically just off the screen. It's not like completely gone. It's just hidden right now. So the third display mode that you have is something called an overlay. So an overlay is essentially partially covering one view with the other. I don't have an example of that, but I'm sure you guys have seen it in different applications you've used on your phone or iPads. Any questions over display modes? Does that kind of make sense? Cool. Alright, so split view controllers when view changes from horizontal to vertical. So when it changes from horizontal to vertical and you have that sort of collapsing animation, there's actually a way for you to control what happens. So it's kind of similar to like your prepare for segue. Whenever you click on a button to prepare for segue, something happens in between the segue and the actual rendering of the view controller that you're segueing to. So similarly, whenever you reorient your screen to where it can't maintain primary and secondary views on the same screen, it triggers what's called this primary view controller for collapsing. So say your view looks really good for like when both primary and secondary are on the same screen, but maybe when you rotate it, it looks really ugly and you want it to point to another view controller just to handle that case. You can do that here. So instead of it managing that transition for you, you can actually specify it point to a completely new view controller altogether that might make it look a little better when it's in portrait mode. So that's what the primary view controller for collapsing function override will allow you to do. So something else that you can do is when the reverse happens. So when you go from a scenario where primary is on top of the secondary or vice versa, and then you switch it to landscape, it sort of expands, right? So similarly to the for collapsing, you have a for expanding function that you can override to maybe bring back that view controller that you maybe aren't pointing to anymore, or if you wanted to do some other functionality when that expanding happens. Alright, cool, that was a mouthful. Does that sort of make sense? Those sort of override functions? Okay, great. Next we have what's called a page view controller. So it's pretty intuitive what a page view controller is. It's basically a list of pages and you can swipe left and right between them. So there's a few things to note. They kind of similar to your table view. You have a data source and you also have a delegate that you can override. And with the data source, you have probably two functions that you'll look out for, which is your page view controller before, and also view controller after. So essentially what those two functions are going to be used for in your scenario is whenever you swipe left or right between the pages, you actually have to handle that the transition to the new view controller yourself. So typically what you'll have to do is you'll maintain an array of view controllers. So say you have like a page view controller that's in control of 5 separate pages. Every single one of those pages will have to have its own view controller that controls what happens when that actually loads. And basically what the page view controller will handle is that transition between those 5 different view controllers. So it's kind of interesting at first because you might be thinking, well, I have 6 pages, I have to create 6 different view controllers, but it kind of makes sense because it does need a controller for every single one that it renders. Yep, and then the dots at the bottom is actually, it comes with what's called a UI page control. So it's not inherent when you bring in the page view controller. It doesn't come with the dots on the bottom based on like how many things you have in your array or how many view controllers you have in your array. But you have to bring in this UI page control and actually set those manually and transition between the two. Make sense? Cool. So that is the end. Oh, well, I have an example. So this is a typical page view controller, and I really like this one because it actually comes with split view. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be implementing our own split view controller where the secondary view is going to be a page view controller. So you'll be able to have different selections on your master view, and when you click on one, it'll change what shows up on our detail. And it'll be a page view so we can switch between the pages. Cool. Make sense? All right. Let's jump into code. Oh, here's another example. Yeah, so whenever you slide between the different views, that should follow. And you can actually set like the tint color and even the shape of it if you wanted to. So if you wanted to make those puppies instead, you could do that as well. All right, cool. 55%. Doing good. All right, let's start a project from scratch. So I might be referring back to this one occasionally if I get stuck, but we will pretty much build one from scratch if I can. There we go. So there's a lot of different things that you can start a project with. It basically denotes what you bring in, but we'll just do a single view app and bring in our page view controller ourselves. So coder girl page split view page view controller. All right, cool. So start off again. We'll take these guys and group them into their own selection called supporting files. I'm sure you guys have gone through this process about 1,000,000 times now, so you're super experts at it. Double click on this. This will be supporting file slash. All right, cool. Just make sure that still works. All right, cool. Build succeeds. And that is our empty view. So we're going to start off by completely getting rid of this view controller. Get rid of that view controller, and also this as well. We'll make our own view controller later. So to bring in the split view controller, it's a tool that shows on the right side, and when you bring it in, it'll bring in a few default things for you. So it's going to give you a navigation controller that points to that table view. So this is going to be your root view controller or the master view. And then this will be the detail. If we run this, it shouldn't do anything right now. But we can see, oh wait, we got something. We got the initial, yeah, the set initial view because we deleted the old view controller. We just have to specify is initial view controller and then start this back up. That should work. Alright, cool. So when you bring one in without doing anything else, you're greeted with this, which is the detail view controller. And if you rotate your screen, that's where it brings up that split view controller, right? So right now there's really nothing driving either of these screens, so there's nothing that shows up. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So instead of this view controller, we're going to actually bring in something else. So we talked about page view controller, so we'll go ahead and bring in our own page view controller too. So let's go ahead and fill in this guy. Kill that. Then bring in a page view controller. So there we go. And then do you guys remember the first thing you do if you initialize a navigation controller and you want it to point to something else? Yep, so you always have to specify the root view controller of a navigation controller because a navigation controller is only a container. So do that real quick. And so do this. So this is going to be our detail view controller. Perfect. All right, now that we have everything hooked up, we can go ahead and start creating our controllers for it. So we'll just go ahead and start off with our master view controller. And this is just going to be our master view controller. And we'll just start off with something really simple. So I had an example of animals and maybe tracking their speed. So basically what we'll have is different animals on the master view controller. When you click on one, it'll update the right side with the name, and then you can swipe to see how fast it goes. Some arbitrary number. Alright. So we'll just create a simple struct. Let name string, and then let speed be an integer. Animals. to another animal. And we'll create some arbitrary ones. So dog, oh, let's be a string. Call it 10. Horses are faster than dogs, I'd assume, so I'll give that 20. And, they're probably faster than, well, maybe slower than dogs. I'll put 6. Okay. So we have this array of 4. So this is your typical table view controller. So we have these override methods. We'll have one section, and since it's only one section, you can actually get rid of it because it'll default to 1, right? And then here, number of rows in section, it will just be animals, dot count. And then we'll also just use a basic table view cell. Yes. So we use identifier, master table view cell, and cell dot title text label dot text equal to animal index path dot name. Index path dot name dot name. All right, perfect. Go ahead and set this class here. Controller, and then this to. That's good. Awesome. Perfect. I am excited. I'm really excited for you guys too. Yeah, let me know if I'm going too fast or if you have any questions. This is more for you guys than it is for me. I know you guys have probably done this like a million times, so I want to try to bore you with this. So it'll be a good refresher in case. It's awesome that you're able to follow on that. That's really good to hear. Alright, table view cell, reuse identifier. Alright, that should render, right? Page view control. Interesting. Okay. Alright, so that basically just your typical table view, right? But this is now showing in our master view, and what we have to do is handle the click when we click on this. Kind of interesting that it's not handling. Oh, it's probably because we haven't. So we filled it in with a page view controller, but we haven't really hooked it up. So you want to see what we made?
It breaks.
If it breaks, it's all your fault. So it's pretty much just a table view. So I'm sure, have you gone over to split view controllers?
I mentioned that they're implemented with container views when updated.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, master detail, and now we should fill in our page view, which is this guy. So right now we specify our detail as that page view controller. All right. Let's go ahead and make that real quick. So new file. It'll be a Cocoa Touch class as well, and then it's going to be all the way at the bottom. So it's a UI page view controller. Page view controller. I'm just kidding. No.
No.
No. Secondary page view controller.
Fine.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, you could just start typing in there and it'll autofill it for you, which is absolutely correct. All right, so my notes. So UI page view controller is going to bring in our UI page view controller delegate and data source, right? But if you guys remember, a cleaner way of doing this is specifying extensions, right? So you can just make an extension off of secondary control and inherit from our UI page view controller delegate, and we'll also make one for the data source. And it's just a way to keep things cleaner. Page view controller data source. All right, cool. So I'm assuming one of these is going to notice because it has protocols that you have to implement. So if we go into this data source, we'll notice that there's two functions that are not optional. There are view controller before and our view controller after, right? Do you guys remember that from the lecture? So that basically specifies what should happen when you page left and right? So that is what we'll go ahead and step out. And fills it in pretty nicely for us. And then we'll go ahead and fill in those functions. So we'll first specify pages. So we're just going to have 2 pages for this, and they'll just be and they'll actually be evaluated file private lazy bars. So are you guys familiar with lazy bars by chance? So they only get basically loaded when it's absolutely needed. So say you have like a list of 5 different view controllers. To load all of them at once is kind of taxing, right? It taxes your memory on your device. So basically what happens is you specify that you have this data structure of 5 different view controllers, and when you actually load a view controller, that's when it gets loaded into memory. So the first one gets loaded, the 4 other ones that you haven't loaded yet aren't actually loaded, but there is a reference to them. And that's what this file private lazy bar will do for you. So we'll specify these pages. That'll be a list of UI view controllers. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. And do you guys remember how to actually initialize a UI view controller programmatically? Perfect. Yeah. UI storyboard and then name. So let's actually go to the storyboard and make our view controller. So they won't actually be connected to our page view, but we'll reference them from our page. So let's bring in like 3 different. Oh, did they? Perfect. Well, this will be just a refresher course then. So you guys went over building these programmatically, I'm assuming?
Yeah, it was done. The container view handled it for itself, so I only had to do it once, and then probably just got abstracted away.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll make these blatantly obvious by making them really bright colors. Blue, red, and green. Alright, so we'll also give these guys a name. So they need a storyboard ID, right? So we'll call this a blue view controller. Oh. So I click on something. Oh, wow. Okay, there it is. Right, so blue view controller. Also, if you ever run into issues where it's not picking up something, make sure that whenever you type in the name in the storyboard, you have to hit enter. Otherwise, it's not going to save for you. Just a little caveat there. It's the most annoying thing you'll have to deal with because you might be naming your segue and your app will crash and you won't know why because you have a name there, but you just haven't hit enter yet. So has that? Yeah.
I think so, because I was like, I know I named
Yeah,
it.
you know you named it.
On my
But
homework and I was like,
why isn't it working? You probably have to hit enter, and it's the smallest, most annoying thing that you'll have to deal with, but it'll completely ruin your night. You'll be just like trying to figure out why this isn't working, and I'll just explode. Yeah, that is probably the issue. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there you go, solving problems. Cool. So we'll specify UI storyboard and then UI storyboard. Name and bundle. So name is going to be what we named it in our... This will actually be the name of our storyboard. So we're using main, right? The main.storyboard. And then the bundle will be the actual controller that we made. So it'll be... Oh, no? Actually, there we go. So what this is doing is basically creating a reference to the storyboard that we have. And then here we can instantiate our view controllers that show up on the view controller. So view controller, actually not this one, and instantiate with identifier. So that's where this identifier comes into play. So we have red view controller, and we'll just go ahead and copy and paste. Oops. Let's go red, blue, green. Alright, so these pages. Oh, right. Alright, cool. So now we have to figure out what happens when we swipe left and right, right? So we'll have to do that manually. And we'll start off by doing a guard let on our view controller index. So basically what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to keep track of what index we're on, and then when we swipe left, we're basically going back an index. So here we'll do view controller index equal pages. That index of. Do you guys know what the dot index of will do in an array? So you'll pass in, I guess, suppose this was like an array of integers. If you do like index of like 3, say you have like 1, 3, and 5 in your array. If you do index of 3, it'll find the index of that 3. So thinking 0, 1, 2, 1 would be the index of 3, right? So that's basically what this is doing here, except instead of using integers, we're using view controllers. So we're going to find the view controller, which actually gets passed into this function here. Here, view controller. So we'll find the index of. Also, you guys remember what guardlets are doing, right? Okay, cool. So guardlet that. If it can't find it, we'll just return no. And if it does, we'll do let previous index equal to view controller index minus 1, right? And here we'll also do another guard previous index greater than or equal to 0. And this is to handle the case if I'm at 0. I don't want to go to -1, right, because it'll be a array out of bounds error. So I want to go to the last one. So basically, if that happens, I want to return pages dot last. Cool. And then we'll go ahead and guard pages dot count greater than previous index. False. And pages previous index. Okay, cool. Does that kind of make sense? All right, awesome. So this is going to be basically the exact same because, well, exact same in the sense that instead of going back, we're going to go forward. So we can probably copy this. And instead of previous index, we'll have next index. And instead of doing -1, we'll do it +1. +1. Oops. That'll be less than pages.count. And we'll return pages.first instead. So this condition basically guards for if I'm the very last view controller and I want to get the next one, I basically get the very first one. Pages.count. Next index, return email, return pages, next index. Alright, cool. Also go ahead and go on the storyboard and also set this to our secondary page view controller. Alright, cool. This will probably still not work because we don't actually specify loading any of the view controllers yet. So we have this array of red, blue, and green view controllers, but we actually don't specify which one should be loaded first when I bring this detailed view controller. Alright, so here's view controller. Let's go ahead and make sure we have to set delegate equals self, and also data source, right? Self.data source equal to self. And if first view controller, let's say pages.first, that'll basically pick off that first view controller. And we'll just go ahead and do set the controller, and we'll specify first view controller. Direction will be forward, true, and that's no. We don't care about the completion. Alright, so now if we run this and cross our fingers, it should work. There we go. And if we slide, so you notice that there's that nice little transition there. This page, not down, not that one, but this one from left to right. So you can actually specify. Looks like it's not actually going. Oh, there we go. Okay, this wasn't clicking. Okay, cool. So that little transition there, you can actually modify yourself. So on the page view controller itself, if you maybe you just really hate that page curl transition, you can switch it to scroll. Run this. And here you can just have a regular one that doesn't really curl much. It'll just go from left to right or right to left. And you can specify that through the storyboard.
Bonus points for writing your own custom thing.
Yeah, super bonus points. Oh my gosh. I'm at 10%. Okay. Wow. Oh wait, I'm at 12%. It's going up. All right, we're doing good.
The simulator probably.
Yeah, the simulator is killing my computer. I'm surprised. I was at 70%. Okay. All right. I'm trying to think whether or not I have enough time to actually do this with you guys. I might just pull up what I did yesterday and show you guys what I actually did, which might work out better because this is about to die and I don't want you guys to not see that transition. So.
You need time for it to save the video as well.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. If you guys don't mind, sorry I ran out of battery. That's insane. Okay, so I'm gonna minimize that. We went through a decent amount. So the basic way to transition or tell your detail view controller that it has to update itself is a segue. Really simple, right? So here, this is basically what we had before. We have this navigation controller, we have a page view controller down here, and we have a table view controller here, which is our master view. So in the middle of these two, I basically have a segue that goes from the cell to our navigation controller. And in our code, on the master view controller, we have this prepare for segue. So this collapsed detail view controller is basically telling us if I don't have anything loaded on the detail and I rotate from landscape to portrait, I want my root view controller to be on top of my detail, because right now detail doesn't have anything, right? So once I prepare for segue though, I know that I actually tapped on something and I have something in my detail. So whenever I rotate again, if it collapses, I want the secondary view to be on top of the primary because I have something there. So I'll just show you guys real quick what that looks like before my computer. Oh, it's going up. Do you see that? It went from 10 to 16%.
It's not on
I have no idea. So basically what that does for us is whenever I rotate, I don't have anything loaded, right? So nothing's in the detail. I haven't clicked on anything. And I rotate, I want the root view controller because otherwise there's nothing in the detail for me to click on. So now, let me do that. I click on dog. It's a little dog there, it's just a label. But so now if I rotate the other way, it'll ignore that little, okay. So now that I have something on the screen, when I rotate, the secondary view will be on top of the primary. And I want that case to happen because I have something loaded in detail. I want that detail to show up. And you can still go back like that and click on something. I can still go back and click on something else. Alright, so prepare for segue. I know. Nav controller. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm passing my nav controller to a UI navigation controller, but that's just a container, right? That's not my actual page view controller. So basically what I do is after I pass my nav controller, I look at the top view controller on that nav bar, and that should pass to my this is the secondary view controller. And if it doesn't, I basically throw a fatal error. And if it does, I set this navigation out of left bar button item. So if we go back to this guy, that's basically what populates this. So basically what this does is if I'm in a split view controller where I have master and secondary on the screen at once, I can click on this and it will basically expand it out to give me more room on the detail. So that's what this basically does, this display mode bar button item. And it just sets left item supplement back button equal to true. And that basically shows it up on the top left of my detail. And this is basically just passing my animal to the view controller that it's segueing to. So it segues to this secondary view controller, which populates with an animal. And this is a little hacky, but I basically set page 0 equal to an instantiation of this animal view controller. So do you guys remember how I was telling you that every single page needs a different view controller basically controlling it if you have some custom components? So basically what I have in the storyboard is this storyboard with basically just a simple label on it. It has one label on the storyboard, and this animal view controller is basically what's driving that controller. So in my secondary view controller that shows this animal name, I instantiate a new view controller with identifier. I haven't changed this yet, but it has identifier of red view controller, and I basically set the animal view controller's animal to the animal that I get back from the segue from my master view controller, primary view controller, and it basically goes into this function and sets configures the view. So it sets the label that text to the animal name and basically shows it up on the screen. So every single time I click on a new animal, that is doing a completely new segue and basically repopulating this name. Sorry, that was really fast, but do you guys have any questions over that part at all? Okay, perfect. Right, so you guys remember how I was talking about in my lecture, we have what's called UI page control. So you'll notice that the one that we started making together, it didn't have any dots on the bottom, right? And this one does. So whenever we, oops. So that dot's controlled by which page you're actually on. So in the code, it basically looks like this. So I made a configure page control function, which basically creates this page control. So you have to specify the dimensions and where it shows up on the screen yourself. So it's basically just passing in a CG rect, and I just have it set to x of 0 and then y of UI screen name bounds max y. Minus 50. So basically what that does is it takes from the very bottom, and there's a buffer about 50 pixels up from the bottom. And it has a height of 50, and then here, oh no. Okay, it froze on me and I guess here. So it has number of pages. Number of pages is how many pages do I have. So based on what number that is, that'll dictate how many dots you have on the bottom. Current page is basically which page I'm on currently, and we just set it to 0 because it's always going to be on the first page when we bring this up. Tint color, that basically specifies what tint color you want when something's selected. So first one is selected now, it's black. Second one's selected, so the second one becomes black. Page indicator tint color is basically what happens when it's not the one selected. So we specify white here. Current page indicator tint color is what's selected. Okay. And then you add the subview, and this right here is what actually handles that transition. So this is basically just logic telling me, basically setting the current page of that page control, and the page control will handle which dot is actually showing up as selected. So this all right here has to do with the page control and showing that dot on here, and you basically have to initialize it, and then you can configure it in another function. Alright, cool. View the load. Okay. I think that was pretty much the bulk of page view controllers and split view controllers. Yeah, so this function right here, so UI split view controller delegate, inside this delegate is a function called collapse secondary. So this basically controls that if I don't have, well, based on the logic that you implemented. So right now it's this collapse detail view controller boolean that basically drives it. So I basically set this to false whenever I transition to when I click on something from the master view, because then I know there's something on the detail. So if you pass in true here and you rotate from horizontal to vertical, the primary view control will always be on top of the secondary. But if you return false there, the secondary view will show up when you rotate. So that's what this delegate here is for. Does that kind of make sense? Perfect. I have 5%. It's probably going to start yelling at me to save. So got through that in record time. Sorry if that was a little fast. If you have any questions about it, feel free to message me or Amanda, and we'd be more than happy to help you.